The blood on her hands was still wet when Dasha stumbled through the last line of trees and saw the candlelight flickering in the farmhouse window. She pressed her palm against the rough bark of an oak, gasping for breath, her lungs burning from the miles she had run through the darkness. Behind her, somewhere in the forest, the Warlord's hunting party would be searching, their torches cutting through the night like angry eyes. She had maybe an hour before they tracked her this far, maybe less if they brought the hounds. The farmhouse sat quiet in a clearing carved from the wilderness, fields of wheat stretching silver under the moon, and she knew this was her only chance. If the human who lived here turned her away, she would die before sunrise. Dasha forced herself to move again, her legs trembling as she crossed the open ground between the forest and the farmstead. Every instinct screamed at her to stay hidden in the trees, but she had seen what happened to orcs who ran without a plan. The Warlord's men would hunt her for days if they had to, and she could not run forever. Her green skin would be easy to spot in daylight, her tusks marking her as prey to any human settlement she tried to pass. She needed shelter, needed someone who would take the risk of hiding her, and this isolated farm was the only option for miles. She reached the wooden door and raised her fist to knock, then hesitated. What would she even say? How did you ask a stranger to risk everything for you? The Warlord controlled these borderlands with an iron fist, and anyone who defied him paid the price. This farmer would know that. He would know what harboring a fugitive orc woman would cost him. But she had no choice now. She knocked, 3 sharp raps that sounded too loud in the stillness. Footsteps approached from inside, heavy and cautious. The door opened a crack, and a man's face appeared in the gap, illuminated by the candle he held. He was perhaps 30 years old, with dark brown hair that fell to his shoulders and gray eyes that narrowed as they took in her appearance. His jaw was covered in several days of stubble, and he wore a simple linen shirt with the sleeves rolled up over muscular forearms. For a long moment he just stared at her, his expression unreadable. "Please," Dasha said, her voice cracking. "Please, I need help. I need somewhere to hide." The man's gaze traveled from her face down to her torn clothing, the blood on her hands, the way she swayed on her feet from exhaustion. "You are running from something," he said. "It was not a question. From the Warlord, from Grokmer's hall. I escaped tonight and his men are hunting me." The words tumbled out of her in a rush. "I know I have no right to ask this of you. I know what it could mean if you are caught helping me. But I have nowhere else to go, and if they find me, they will kill me. Or worse." The man was silent for another long moment, his face still showing nothing of what he was thinking. Then he stepped back and opened the door wider. "Get inside. Quickly." Dasha nearly sobbed with relief as she stumbled over the threshold. The man closed the door behind her and shot the bolt home, then moved to the window and peered out through the shutters into the darkness. "How far behind you are they?" he asked. "An hour, maybe less. I ran as fast as I could, tried to cover my tracks in the streams, but they have trackers." "Good ones." The man turned from the window to face her, and she got her first proper look at him in the candlelight. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his body carrying the kind of strength that came from years of hard labor. There were scars on his forearms, old ones that had faded to white lines against his tanned skin. His gray eyes studied her with an intensity that made her want to look away, but she held his gaze. "My name is Marcus Ingram," he said. "This is my farm. I work it alone, no hired hands, no family nearby. The nearest neighbor is 3 miles south. If Grokmer's men come here looking for you, there is no one to witness what happens." Dasha's heart sank. He was going to turn her out after all, or worse, he was going to kill her himself and deliver her body to the Warlord for a reward. She took a step backward, looking for another way out, but Marcus held up a hand. "I am not threatening you," he said quietly. "I am telling you that if I hide you, there will be no one to stop the Warlord's men from burning this place to the ground with both of us inside it. I need you to understand what you are asking me to risk." "I understand," Dasha said. "I would not ask if I had any other choice." Marcus nodded slowly. "Then we need to work fast. Come with me." He led her through the small farmhouse, moving quickly through a main room with a stone fireplace and simple wooden furniture, then into a back room that served as a bedroom. He knelt beside the bed and pulled a trapdoor up from the floor, revealing a dark space beneath. "Root cellar," he explained. "It goes back under the house. There is a false wall at the far end that opens into a crawlspace. You can hide there. Even if they search the cellar, they should not find it unless they know what to look for." Dasha stared down into the darkness, her chest tightening. The space looked cramped and cold like a grave, but it was better than being caught. "Thank you," she whispered. "Go down. I will bring you water and something to eat. Then I need to clean up any trace of your presence up here. If they come tonight, you must stay absolutely silent no matter what you hear. Do you understand?" She nodded and lowered herself down through the trapdoor, her feet finding the packed earth floor below. Marcus handed her the candle, then disappeared for a moment. He returned with a water skin, a chunk of bread wrapped in cloth, and a heavy wool blanket. "The crawl space is at the back, behind the shelves on the east wall. Push on the center board and it will swing inward. Wait there until I come for you." "Marcus," she said, looking up at him. "Why are you helping me?" His expression softened just slightly. "Because everyone deserves a chance to be free. Now go. Hurry." The trapdoor closed above her, and Dasha was left in the flickering candlelight, surrounded by the earthy smell of root vegetables and dried herbs hanging from the ceiling beams. She made her way to the back of the cellar, found the false wall, and squeezed through into the crawlspace beyond. It was barely tall enough to sit upright in, the walls made of rough stone and packed clay. She settled herself on the blanket, wrapped it around her shoulders, and waited. Time passed in agonizing slowness. She could hear Marcus moving around above her, the sound of water being poured, the scrape of furniture being moved. He was erasing any sign that she had been there. She forced herself to eat some of the bread, though her stomach was churning with fear, and drank sparingly from the water skin. The candle burned down to a stub, and she blew it out to conserve it, plunging herself into complete darkness. Then she heard the sound she had been dreading. Voices outside, rough and demanding, the thunder of fists pounding on the door. She pressed her hand over her mouth to stifle any sound, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might give her away. Marcus's voice, calm and steady. "What is the meaning of this?" Another voice, gravelly and harsh. "We are looking for a runaway orc woman. She escaped from Warlord Grokmer's hall tonight. Have you seen her, an orc? Here? No, I have seen no one. I was asleep until you woke me. We are going to search the property, Warlord's orders. Of course, search wherever you like. I have nothing to hide." Footsteps above her, heavy boots on the wooden floor, multiple men spreading out through the house. Dasha held herself perfectly still, barely breathing. She heard them opening doors, rifling through Marcus's belongings. Then the trapdoor opened and torchlight flooded the root cellar. "Just storage down here," one of the men called out. Footsteps on the ladder, boots hitting the earthen floor. The man walked the length of the cellar, and Dasha could see the glow of his torch through the cracks in the false wall. He was so close. If he noticed anything unusual about the wall, if he pushed on it, she was done. "Nothing here," the man said after what felt like an eternity. "Just vegetables and preserves." The footsteps retreated, the trapdoor closed, and Dasha allowed herself to breathe again. But the searchers were not finished. She heard them going outside, checking the barn, the animal pens, the fields. They were thorough, she had to give them that. It was another hour before she heard them leave, their voices fading into the distance. Even then, she did not move. Marcus had told her to wait until he came for her, and she trusted that he knew what he was doing. She stayed in the crawlspace, listening to the silence, until finally the trapdoor opened again and Marcus's voice called down softly. "They are gone. You can come out." Dasha emerged from the crawlspace and climbed back up through the trapdoor, her body stiff from sitting motionless for so long. Marcus helped her up into the bedroom, and she saw that dawn was breaking outside the windows, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. "They will be back," Marcus said. "They will search every farm and settlement in a 20-mile radius, but for now you are safe." Dasha looked at him, this stranger who had risked his life for her, and felt something crack open in her chest. "Why?" she asked again. "You do not know me. You do not owe me anything. Why would you do this?" Marcus met her eyes, and she saw something in his expression that she had not expected. Pain. Old pain buried deep. "I was a soldier once," he said quietly. "I fought in the border wars, killed men I did not know for reasons I did not understand. I have seen what happens when people follow orders without questioning them, when they treat others as less than human. When you knocked on my door tonight, covered in blood and begging for help, I saw a person who needed mercy. And I decided that for once in my life I was going to be the one who gave it." Dasha felt tears prick her eyes, and she looked away, ashamed of the emotion that threatened to overwhelm her. "I am in your debt," she said hoarsely. "You owe me nothing, but you need to tell me what happened. Why are you running from Grokmer? What did you do that made him send his entire guard after you?" Dasha wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the blanket. "I was his servant," she said. "He took me from my clan when I was 16, said I would work in his hall as payment for my people's continued safety. I have been there for 4 years, cleaning, cooking, serving at his table. Last night, he was entertaining guests, other warlords from the northern territories. They were drinking, boasting about their conquests, and one of them said something about raiding a human village to the east, burning it to the ground, killing everyone who resisted." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "There was a human girl in the hall, a slave like me. She was only 14, and she was from that village. When she heard them laughing about murdering her family, she screamed. Just screamed. And Grokmer got angry. He said she was disrupting his feast, being disrespectful. He drew his sword and killed her right there in front of everyone." Marcus's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, letting her continue. "Something broke inside me when I saw that," Dasha said. "I have seen terrible things in that hall, but this was different. She was just a child. She did not deserve to die for grieving her family. And I realized that if I stayed there, I would become just as complicit in Grokmer's cruelty as his warriors were. So I ran. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen, slipped out through the servants' entrance, and I ran." "The blood on your hands," Marcus said. "Did you have to fight your way out?" "A guard saw me leaving. He tried to stop me. I did not mean to kill him, I just wanted to get past him, but he grabbed me and I panicked." Her voice broke. "I have never killed anyone before. I did not want to." Marcus reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder, the gesture tentative but comforting. "You did what you had to do to survive. That guard would not have let you go, and you know what would have happened if you had stayed." Dasha nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. They stood there in silence for a long moment, and then Marcus cleared his throat and stepped back. "You should wash," he said. "There is a basin in the main room and I can heat some water. Then you need to rest. You look like you are about to collapse." He was right. Now that the immediate danger had passed, exhaustion was crashing over her like a wave. She followed him to the main room and washed the dried blood from her hands while he built up the fire in the hearth and set a pot of water to heat. When it was warm, he poured it into the basin for her, and then tactfully turned his back while she cleaned herself as best she could. When she was finished, he gave her one of his own shirts to wear, a clean linen tunic that hung past her knees. Her torn and blood-stained clothes he took outside to burn, along with any other evidence that might tie her to the murder at the Warlord's hall. Then he offered her his bed, but she refused, not wanting to take it from him. They compromised on her sleeping on a pallet by the fire, wrapped in the blanket from the cellar. Dasha lay down and closed her eyes, expecting to lie awake with fear and guilt churning in her mind. But her body had other ideas, and within minutes she was asleep, dreamless and deep. When she woke, the sun was high in the sky and the smell of cooking food filled the house. She sat up, disoriented for a moment, and then remembered where she was. Marcus was at the hearth, stirring a pot over the fire. He looked over when he heard her move and gave her a small nod. "I made stew. You should eat something properly. You barely touched the bread last night." Dasha rose and joined him at the table, accepting the bowl he offered her. The stew was simple but good, chunks of meat and vegetables in a savory broth. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, and Marcus ate across from her in companionable silence. "What happens now?" she asked finally. "I cannot stay hidden in your cellar forever. Grockmer will not stop looking for me." Marcus set down his spoon and leaned back in his chair. "I have been thinking about that. The way I see it, you have two options. One, I can help you get farther away, give you supplies and directions to settlements beyond Grockmer's reach. The free cities to the south do not bow to the warlords, and they might take you in. It would be dangerous, traveling alone, but it is possible. And the second option, you stay here. You help me work the farm, and we tell anyone who asks that you are my hired hand. Your skin and tusks mark you as an orc, but there are some humans in these parts who employ orc workers, especially for heavy labor. It is not common, but it is not unheard of. As long as we are careful, as long as you stay out of sight when strangers come by, it might work." Dasha stared at him. "You would let me stay, even knowing the risk?" "I live alone out here because I choose to," Marcus said. "I left the army, left the cities, left everything behind because I wanted peace. But peace gets lonely after a while, and honestly, I could use the help around the farm. There is more work than one person can manage, especially during planting and harvest. You barely know me." "That is true, but I am a good judge of character, and I think you are someone worth taking a chance on." Dasha felt something warm unfurl in her chest, something she had not felt in a very long time. "Hope. I will stay," she said, "at least for a while, until we know whether it is safe." Marcus smiled, the first real smile she had seen from him, and it transformed his face. "Then we have a lot of work to do. The fields need tending, the fence on the north pasture needs mending, and the chickens have been getting lazy about laying eggs. Think you can handle that?" "I am stronger than I look," Dasha said, returning his smile. "You might be surprised." Over the following days, they settled into a rhythm. Dasha proved herself to be a tireless worker, her orcish strength allowing her to handle tasks that would have taken Marcus twice as long on his own. She mended the fence, hauled water, and even managed to coax the chickens into producing more eggs by reorganizing their coop and giving them better feed. Marcus watched her work with growing respect, and in the evenings, they would sit by the fire and talk. She learned that he had been a soldier for 10 years, fighting in the endless border skirmishes between human kingdoms and orc territories. He had seen terrible things, done terrible things, and finally reached a point where he could not stomach it anymore. He had deserted, bought this land with his saved pay, and built a new life for himself far from the wars. In turn, she told him about her life before Grokmer's Hall. She had been born into a small clan that lived in the foothills, a peaceful group that wanted nothing to do with the warlords and their constant fighting. But Grokmer had demanded tribute, and when her clan could not pay, he had taken her instead. Her family had not fought to keep her. They had let her go, believing it was the only way to keep the rest of the clan safe. "You hate them for that?" Marcus asked one night, his voice gentle. Dasha considered the question. I used to. I used to think they should have fought for me, should have refused to let Grokmer take me. But I understand now. They were scared. They did what they thought they had to do to survive. I cannot hate them for that. You think you will ever go back to them? I do not know. Maybe someday when it is safe. But for now, this is enough. This is more than I ever thought I would have. The weeks turned into months, and the danger seemed to recede. Grokmer's men did not return to the farm, and no word of a fugitive orc woman reached them from the nearby settlements. Dasha began to relax, to believe that maybe, just maybe, she had actually escaped. She and Marcus fell into an easy partnership, working side by side during the day and sharing meals in the evening. She learned to read the weather by watching the way he studied the sky, learned which crops needed more water and which needed more sun. He taught her how to repair tools, how to preserve food for the winter, how to coax a reluctant goat into being milked. And slowly, without either of them quite noticing when it started, something deeper began to grow between them. It was in the way Marcus would steady her with a hand on her arm when she climbed down from the hayloft, the way his touch lingered just a moment longer than necessary. It was in the way Dasha found herself watching him when he was working, admiring the strength in his shoulders, the concentration on his face. It was in the way they sat closer together by the fire each night, their knees almost touching, their conversation stretching later and later into the evening. But neither of them spoke of it. The world outside the farm was still dangerous, still full of people who would see their growing connection as something wrong, something unnatural. And so they kept their feelings to themselves, locked away behind walls of caution and fear. The first snow fell in late autumn, dusting the fields with white. Dasha stood at the window, watching the flakes drift down, and felt Marcus come up behind her. "We will be snowed in soon," he said. "The roads become impassable in winter. We will not see anyone else for months." "Is that a bad thing?" she asked, glancing back at him. "No," he said quietly. "I do not think it is." Their eyes met, and something passed between them, something electric and terrifying and wonderful all at once. Dasha turned away first, her heart pounding. That night as they sat by the fire, Marcus spoke. "Dasha, I need to tell you something. I have been thinking about it for weeks, and I cannot keep it to myself anymore." She looked at him, her breath catching. "What is it?" "I care about you, more than I should, more than is wise. I know that what I feel is complicated, that there are 1,000 reasons why this is a terrible idea. But I cannot pretend anymore that you are just someone I am helping, just a hired hand. You are more than that to me. Much more." Dasha's heart felt like it was going to burst out of her chest. "Marcus, I feel the same way. I have for a while now. But I was afraid to say anything, afraid that you would think I was just grateful for your help, that my feelings were not real." "Are they real?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, they are real." He reached out and took her hand, his fingers warm and strong around hers. "I do not know how this is going to work. I do not know if the world will ever accept us. But I know that I do not want to pretend anymore. I want to be honest about what I feel, about what we feel." "So do I," she said, squeezing his hand. "So do I." He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to, but she did not want to. She met him halfway, and when their lips touched, it felt like coming home. The kiss was tentative at first, exploratory, but it quickly deepened into something more passionate, more desperate. They broke apart, both breathing hard, and Marcus rested his forehead against hers. "I have wanted to do that for so long," he murmured. "Me too," she whispered back. They sat there by the fire, holding each other, and for the first time since she had fled the Warlord's hall, Dasha felt truly safe. Not just physically safe, but emotionally safe, like she had found a place where she belonged, where she was wanted for who she was. The winter passed in a blur of quiet contentment. Snowed in, as Marcus had predicted, they spent the long, cold months together, learning each other's rhythms and quirks. They shared the same bed now, their nights filled with warmth and tenderness. Marcus was a gentle lover, always mindful of her comfort, and Dasha marveled at how different this was from everything she had imagined. She had thought that if she ever loved someone, it would be another orc, someone from her own kind. But Marcus had shown her that love did not care about the color of your skin or the shape of your tusks. Love was about finding someone who saw you, really saw you, and chose to stay. When spring came and the snows melted, they ventured into the nearest town together for the first time. Dasha wore a hood to cover her features, and Marcus introduced her as his farmhand to the few people they encountered. There were some strange looks, some whispered comments, but no one challenged them outright. The world was changing slowly, and there were some humans who were beginning to question the old prejudices. They bought seeds for planting, traded some of their preserved goods for tools and supplies, and returned to the farm. As they worked together to prepare the fields for the new season, Marcus stopped suddenly and turned to her. "Dasha, I have been thinking. This farm, this life, it is ours now, not just mine, ours, and I want to make that official." She looked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple silver ring, small and unadorned. "I mean, I want you to marry me. I know it is not legal. I know no priest or magistrate would recognize it, but I do not care about that. I want to make a promise to you in front of whatever gods are listening, that I will love you and stand by you for the rest of my life. Will you do the same for me?" Dasha stared at the ring, her vision blurring with tears. "Yes," she choked out. "Yes, I will marry you." Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger, and then he pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "We will make our own ceremony," he said. "Just the two of us. We will speak our vows under the sky with the earth as our witness, and that will be enough." They chose a day in late spring, when the fields were green and the air was warm. They stood together at the edge of the farm, where the cleared land met the forest, and they spoke their promises to each other. Marcus vowed to protect her, to cherish her, to build a life with her that was free from fear. Dasha vowed to stand by him, to work beside him, to love him with all the fierce loyalty that burned in her orcish heart. When the words were spoken, they kissed, sealing their promises, and it felt like the world itself was blessing them. Birds sang in the trees, the wind rustled through the new wheat, and the sun shone down on them with gentle warmth. They returned to the house, and Marcus cooked them a special meal, a feast by their standards. They ate and drank and laughed, giddy with joy and relief. That night, they made love with a new intensity, a new sense of permanence, knowing that they were no longer just two people hiding from the world. They were a family now, bonded by choice and love. The seasons cycled on, and their life together deepened. They expanded the farm, adding more fields, more animals. Dasha proved to have a gift for working with livestock, and she built a thriving herd of goats that produced rich milk and soft wool. Marcus taught her to read and write, and she pored over the few books he owned, hungry for knowledge. There were still moments of fear, times when strangers came too close, or when news of Grokmer's activities reached them. But each time they weathered it together, their bond growing stronger with each challenge they faced. One evening in their second year together, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Dasha placed a hand on her stomach and looked at Marcus with shining eyes. "I think I am pregnant," she said softly. Marcus's face went through a series of expressions: shock, fear, and finally settling on pure, radiant joy. "Are you certain? I have missed my monthly bleeding twice now, and I have been feeling strange in the mornings. Dizzy, nauseous. My mother told me about these signs once when one of my clan sisters was expecting." Marcus pulled her into his arms, laughing and crying at the same time. "We are going to have a child. A child, Dasha. Can you believe it?" "I am scared," she admitted. "I do not know what kind of world we are bringing this baby into. Will they be accepted? Will they be safe?" "I do not know," Marcus said honestly. "But I know that we will love them and we will fight to give them a good life. That is all any parent can do." The pregnancy was not easy. Dasha's orcish physiology made carrying a half-human child difficult, and there were times when Marcus feared he would lose her. But she was strong, stronger than anyone he had ever known, and she endured. When the time came, she labored through a long, agonizing night, and Marcus held her hand and whispered words of encouragement, feeling utterly helpless. And then, as dawn broke over the farm, their daughter was born. She was small but healthy, with her mother's green-tinged skin and her father's gray eyes. Tiny tusks were just visible when she yawned, and her ears came to delicate points. She was perfect, a bridge between two worlds. They named her Mira, which meant both peace and wonder in the old human language. Marcus held her for the first time, tears streaming down his face, and vowed that he would do everything in his power to make sure she grew up in a world that was kinder than the one they had known. Dasha watched them, her husband and her daughter, and felt a completeness that she had never imagined possible. She had fled the Warlord's hall in darkness and terror, with no hope beyond survival. And now here she was, on a farm in the middle of nowhere, with a family that loved her and a future that was hers to shape. As if reading her thoughts, Marcus looked up at her and smiled. "We made it," he said. "We actually made it." "Yes," Dasha agreed, reaching out to touch Mira's tiny hand. "We did." The years that followed were not without their challenges. Raising a half-orc child in a world that was still deeply prejudiced required constant vigilance and creativity. But Marcus and Dasha faced each obstacle together, teaching Mira to be proud of both halves of her heritage, to be strong and kind and unafraid. They watched her grow, watched her learn to walk and talk and help with the farm chores. She had her mother's strength and her father's gentleness, and she possessed a curiosity about the world that delighted them both. When she was old enough, they taught her to read and write, to work the land, to defend herself if necessary. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the world around them began to change. Other mixed families emerged from the shadows, emboldened by the knowledge that they were not alone. Trade between human and orc settlements increased, driven by pragmatic farmers and merchants who cared more about profit than prejudice. The warlords still held power in many regions, but their grip was weakening as people began to question the old ways. Marcus and Dasha did not fool themselves into thinking that everything was suddenly perfect. There was still hatred, still violence, still fear. But there was also hope, and that made all the difference. One autumn evening, when Mira was 5 years old and playing in the yard with a litter of puppies, a visitor arrived at the farm. Dasha tensed when she saw the figure approaching, her hand instinctively moving to the knife at her belt. But then she recognized the green skin, the way the stranger walked, and her breath caught. It was her brother, Durok, from her old clan. She had not seen him in nearly 10 years. Marcus stepped up beside her, his hand on her shoulder, ready to defend her if necessary. But Duruk raised his hands in a gesture of peace as he drew closer. "Dasha," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I have been searching for you for months. I heard rumors of an orc woman living on a human farm in these parts, and I hoped it might be you." "Why?" Dasha asked, her voice wary. "Why were you searching for me?" "To apologize. To tell you that we were wrong to let Grokmer take you. We should have fought for you, should have protected you. We were cowards, and I have regretted it every day since." Dasha felt tears prick her eyes. "It is in the past, Duruk." "I am not angry anymore. I can see that," Duruk said, looking around at the farm, at Marcus, at Mira playing in the yard. "You have built a good life here, a life you chose. I am happy for you." "Would you like to stay for dinner?" Marcus asked, surprising both Dasha and Duruk. "We have plenty, and it would be good for Dasha to catch up with her family." Duruk looked at Marcus with new respect. "I would be honored, thank you." They spent the evening together, sharing food and stories. Duruk told them that the clan was doing well, that they had moved farther into the mountains to escape Grokmer's reach. He spoke of their parents, who were growing old but still strong, and of other clan members that Dasha remembered. And when Mira shyly approached him, curious about this new visitor, Duruk scooped her up with a laugh and declared that she was the finest niece he could have hoped for. As the night grew late and Duruk prepared to leave, he pulled Dasha aside. "You are always welcome to come back to the clan, you know. You and your husband and your daughter, we would make a place for you." Dasha smiled and shook her head. "Thank you, but this is my home now. This farm, this life with Marcus and Mira, this is where I belong." Duruk nodded, understanding. "Then I am glad you found your place. Be well, sister." He left, disappearing into the darkness, and Dasha returned to the house where Marcus was tucking Mira into bed. She watched them for a moment, her heart full, and then joined them, adding her own goodnight kiss to their daughter's forehead. Later, as she and Marcus lay in bed together, his arms wrapped around her, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. She had fled the Warlord's hall in terror, with nothing but the desperate hope of survival. She had stumbled onto this farm and begged a stranger for help, never imagining that he would become her husband, her partner, the father of her child. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus murmured, his breath warm against her ear. "About how lucky I am," Dasha said. "About how one moment of courage, one decision to run, led me to everything I have now." "I am the lucky one," Marcus countered. "You came into my life and gave it meaning again. You gave me a family, a purpose. I was just existing before you, but now I am living." Dasha turned in his arms so she could face him, her fingers tracing the lines of his face in the darkness. "We saved each other," she said softly. "That night I knocked on your door, we both needed saving, just in different ways." "I love you," Marcus said, the words simple but weighted with years of shared experience, of challenges overcome, of joy found in unexpected places. "I love you too," Dasha replied. "Always." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, secure in the knowledge that whatever the future brought, they would face it together. Outside, the farm slept peacefully under a blanket of stars, a small sanctuary of love and acceptance in a world that was still learning to embrace such things. And in the morning, they would wake and begin again, working the land they loved, raising their daughter to be strong and kind, building a life that was entirely their own. It was not a grand or glamorous existence, but it was theirs, earned through courage and sacrifice and the simple decision to choose love over fear. That, Dasha thought as sleep finally claimed her, was more than enough. It was everything.